Classic talk shows have given us a glimpse into the lives, careers, hearts, and minds of some of the most fascinating people on Earth. When we look back at some of our favorite classic talk shows, we often find they captured some shocking moments. Join Factsverse to learn about the classic talk shows that captured shocking moments on camera. Muhammad Ali and Joe Frazier with Dick Cavett and Michael Parkinson. Both Muhammad Ali and Joe Frazier were the top boxers of their time. In 1974, they appeared together to discuss their careers and upcoming fight on The Dick Cavett Show. This particular episode was co-hosted by Sir Michael Parkinson, Britain's foremost talk show host. Sir Michael had interviewed Ali several times and later stated the boxer was his favorite guest and the most fascinating man he ever met. Dick Cavett too seemed to enjoy interviewing both gentlemen, but perhaps was particularly struck by Muhammad Ali. But of course, what happens when you have rivals talking together on a talk show? You can't always expect civility. About an hour and a half into the program, the two boxers began to argue with each other, and they both stood up, removed their jackets, and looked ready to spar. The two nervous talk show hosts, looking like children in front of these heavyweights, tried to break it up. Somehow they managed. The two hosts calmed the boxers down, but this became a shocking moment. It showed Ali was always ready to fight, and he would never just talk the talk, but also walk the walk. Iceberg Slim on Joe Pyne. Joe Pyne was one of the early shock jocks and was a major influence on talk show hosts as well as commentators, not afraid to be controversial or confrontational. But what set Joe Pyne apart is that he was also willing to have conversations with people with whom he disagreed or even ridiculed. He wasn't afraid to interview characters who came from parts of society that were often shunned. One of those characters was the author Iceberg Slim. During the interview, Slim wore a mask so as not to reveal his identity. As he became more famous, it was revealed that Iceberg Slim was the pseudonym of Robert Beck, and he became more open about his past life. In this shocking interview, Iceberg Slim revealed that many of the incidents in his book, Pimp, The Story of My Life, were inspired by actual events in his own life. He discussed he was once a pimp, and he left that life to become a writer, and he made a career writing about his past life and the characters he met along the way. This was shocking for the time, to hear real-life stories about the seedier aspects of American life. This Joe Pyne interview of Iceberg Slim is arguably one of the most underrated talk show interviews, and the shocking moments when the author discusses his life as a pimp shouldn't be missed. David Susskind discussing gay life. David Susskind was another pioneer of the talk show and is recognized as one of the greatest talk show hosts the country has produced. He made his name because he wasn't afraid to discuss difficult topics or host controversial guests. But one that stood out and made viewers uncomfortable was when he interviewed many openly gay guests on the show. This wasn't the first time David discussed homosexuality on the show, and he would often ask guests about their opinion on homosexuality. But in the interview with these men, some of them began dancing around and were scantily clad. One of them even stripped in front of David. While this has become common on TV today, it was shocking and discomforting to many viewers at the time. What made him stand out is that he was respected by people of different perspectives and political persuasions. This is because he wanted in-depth discussions with people of differing views and was always respectful to them. Firing line in the Republic of New Africa. William F. Buckley Jr. was one of the great talk show hosts of all time, and his program, Firing Line, opened the door to many great leaders, entertainers, intellectuals, and activists. While Buckley was perhaps one of America's most notable conservative intellectuals, he also interviewed people of differing persuasions and gave them a fair hearing. As a result, he wasn't afraid to interview controversial guests. One of those many controversial guests he interviewed was Milton Henry, whom he interviewed November 18, 1968. This was at the height of the Civil Rights Movement, and it was 3 years after Malcolm X was assassinated and 7 months after Dr. King was assassinated. Milton Henry was the founder of the movement for the Republic of New Africa. He asserted that black and white Americans could never get along, and it was best that black Americans secede from the U.S. to form a new country called the Republic of New Africa. During the entire interview, he had 2 bodyguards standing on stage watching him. The interview discussed the uncomfortable topic of race relations in the country. While Buckley insisted the races must find a way to get along and see each other as Americans, Milton Henry didn't budge on his views. The interview was shocking then and is even more shocking now. John Lennon reveals he was being watched. Let's return to the Dick Cavett Show when he interviewed John Lennon and Yoko Ono together. John had appeared on the show before, and now that the Beatles had gone their separate ways, each artist in the group were expressing their thoughts on the world through their music. John had become very political and wasn't afraid to discuss his views on politics and social issues. Through songs such as Woman and Imagine, he had made an impact on our public consciousness. While the First Amendment protects free speech, any artist who has stirred the pot has been under the watchful eye of the government. In this interview on Dick Cavett, John Lennon shocked audiences when he revealed he was being watched by the FBI. Lennon has stated that if anything happened to him and Yoko, it was not an accident. This was a shocking interview and one we should perhaps watch again. Tony Brown and Thomas Sowell. Tony Brown is one of the most respected journalists and talk show hosts of his generation. He could discuss different points of view in a calm and respectful manner. In the early 80s, he interviewed the distinguished American economist Dr. Thomas Sowell about his new book, The Economics and Politics of Race. While the interview doesn't feature an audience and is rather calm, the discussion was a bit shocking for the time and perhaps more shocking today. That's because Thomas Sowell discussed the economic outcomes of the various races and ethnic groups in the U.S. and the world. He challenged mainstream notions that it was simply racism or discrimination that held certain minorities back. He discussed how culture plays an effect in positive or negative economic outcomes. He criticized affirmative action and stated it was harmful to Black Americans. While the discussion was calm and mature, perhaps every revelation by Dr. Sowell on the subject of race and economics was shocking not only for the time, but also today. Now it's time to hear from you. Are you a fan of any of these great talk shows? Do you think today's talk shows match up to these classic talk shows? Let us know in the comments section below.